excellent job at the review yesterday.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I always forget to, I always tell Chip he's doing a good job and I always forget to say it in public. So thank you for covering that ground.
Absolutely.
During the review.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Mina is still at the vet. She's having extractions and surgery. And poor Hugo has to go pick her up, and she's going to have a cone on for 3 days, Jeff.
Oh.
I know. She sleeps on her bed. How is she going to sleep with a cone?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to sleep with her.
Yeah.
when she has a cone.
I know.
You want more before we start?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, though.
It is 4:30 on February 3rd, year 2023. We are at the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Baronova, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Councilmember Dremel?
Here.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Here.
Mayor Potter?
Yeah.
All are present.
Brian, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure.
Place your hand over your heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brian. Well done. Ready, our first item then is under extraordinary business. We're going to have Marnie's going to give us a presentation, a review presentation on preliminary housing feasibility report and housing and element update. Marnie, do you want to preface this at all, Chip? No, sir. Marnie, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon. So this afternoon, staff is presenting a housing feasibility report that was recently completed. The city received grant funding in the amount of $290,000 to help with our housing element update. So a portion of those funds were actually used to prepare the housing feasibility study. Staff worked with Mr. Chris Blakeney of Eco Northwest in the preparation of the report, and the report is now available for public review. Mr. Blakeney was in the process of signing on, so he should be joining us from Zoom if the council has any questions for him. So just briefly, the report looks at current market conditions in Carmel, including home prices, ownership and rental data, as well as housing cost burden, among a whole host of other things. The report also provides a review of development standards, specifically in our commercial area as it relates to housing. And then another component of the report looks at potential future housing sites. So staff did conduct some targeted outreach to the owners of property that were identified in the report, just to start the conversation about potential redevelopment interest. The city's not looking to purchase any property or develop any housing per se, but rather understand the level of interest that property owners might have in constructing new housing. The City Council has also appointed a housing ad hoc committee, which includes Vice Mayor Bobby Richards and Council Member Karen Ferlito. The committee has met 6 times to date and will host our second community meeting at the end of this month on February 28th. And at that time, we're going to discuss this housing feasibility report in greater detail. We do invite interested members of the public, as well as property owners, architects, and developers to review the report and participate in the upcoming community meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Ferlito for any additional comments.
Hi, thank you, Marnie. Yeah, this is it's an interesting project that we're working on. I really hope that more people will come to this meeting on February 28th and hear what we're working on and thinking of. I want it to be clear that while the city isn't saying that we're going to build these units, the city is merely trying to figure out a way how to incentivize potential developers or builders to come in and build these units. But in no way is the city doing it, in no way is the city demanding any property owner to do that. There's nothing like that going on. So there's also, as I said before, there's 2 fronts. We're also going back to the state and asking them to relieve us of such a heavy burden. So we're kind of fighting this on 2 different fronts. So any information that you can give us at some of these open meetings, please do. And anyways, it is an exciting project, and I hope that nothing but the best comes out of it. Karen?
Yes. Yes, I have some comments. Like Bobby, Councilman Richards said, it's a very challenging thing that we're trying to do, but we're trying to do it with positive solutions and not be obstructionists. We have certain state laws that we must comply with, and there is about 2.5 million, a lack of about 2.5 million housing units in California. And if you imagine it's like a big pie, and every county and every city has a piece of that pie to come up with housing in those areas. Community safety is really about investing in the whole health of our community. Affordable housing, green spaces, living wages, access to healthy food. When we invest in communities, we invest in a future that is healthy and safe for us all. So I hope when we get together on the 28th, you come with creative solutions and start to get involved with how do we create more community through this opportunities that we might be able to present, how we allow more people who work in our community to live in our community so that we can also tackle some climate change. I listened to a very interesting webinar last night about how affordable housing is a lever in climate change, because the more people have to commute and drive to their jobs, the more greenhouse gases. And we also, as you know, have an aging community here, and it would be nice to have some new people in our community and also give perhaps more room for more of our seniors to move into some affordable situations. So we're very excited about this being a positive process, and we want to invite you to come on the 28th.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on this,
And
too.
by the way,
appreciate that.
our staff is doing a tremendous job. Marnie and Catherine and Brandon are really great to work with. So.
Excellent. Are there any other comments by council members? Jeff?
Yes, thank you. I just have a couple of comments in sort of response to the report. You know, when I read through the report, it seemed like there was a very large emphasis on placing these units downtown. And you know, downtown is 20 blocks in our community. You know, there are a couple dozen blocks in downtown, and there are a few hundred blocks in the rest of town. And I worry about the impacts, both the short-term impacts, the sort of constant construction that will be going on in downtown over the course of the next, 8 or 10 years, as well as some of the other impacts on downtown. So I would hope that our resulting housing documentation and housing element would look at the feasibility of sort of lightening that burden a little bit on downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Alessandra?
Couple of things. When I read the report, I felt that it had a predetermined conclusion, and basically the recommendations are that we weaken our zoning and densify, and I really do not think that that is what Carmel wants. We've spent basically our entire existence with strong zoning, and it's created the character that we have now and the sense of place we have now. For example, the 1- and 2-story buildings downtown and in residential areas, that's what creates the unique sense of place. If we remove those and start doing all 2-story or 3-story or 4-story, it will forever and inalterably change Carmel. I also find it ironic that we're working so hard on Design Traditions 1.5 to strengthen our design guidelines, and here, on the other hand, we're talking about weakening our zoning. And our strict zoning is what has made this community what it is, and we can't give that up. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I've read through our land use plan, which says to avoid overbuilding, and this would do densification and overbuilding and completely change our downtown character and the character of our residential neighborhoods. So I really think this is something that we need to think about closely and think about what the future we want to see Carmel as. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a presentation item only. Public testimony would be best served on February 28th. I think that'd be the appropriate forum for as much input as we can get at that time, unless there's any objection to council. But I think this is going to be the really very vital public input process that I hope we can embark on as a community. I think Alessandra's made some very good points. I share a concern about the end of zoning as we know it. I've said that before, but we have a mandate here we've got to address, but I don't think we have to run out and build these things immediately. So that noted, why don't we go ahead then and go on to public comment? Oh, and we've got the public comment. It's an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. 3-minute limitation on the testimony. State your name for the record. I'd appreciate it. I do see somebody in the public here. Yes, come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter, members of the City Council, City Administrator Chip Rearick. My name is Wanda Vollmer, and I'm here with Scott Smythe. We're captains of the Carmel CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team. CERT educates citizen volunteers about disaster preparedness for hazards that may impact their area and trains them in basic disaster preparedness response skills, such as fire safety, search and rescue, team organization, and disaster medical operations. We've been captains since 2019, and we have 30 fantastic members. We've assisted Carmel PD, Monterey Fire, and various agencies and deployments that have included tsunami watches, evacuations, firefighter rehab, beach closures, vaccination clinics, evidence searches, missing persons, and some shark incidents here and throughout the peninsula. We provide mutual aid to neighboring communities and keep our team active with multiple training sessions to ensure our team is prepared and motivated. We're here today to give you an update on what we've been up to since the beginning of the year. Starting January 2nd, we deployed to Pacific Grove with welfare checks on residents where power outages extended to 3 to 4 days. January 4th, the bomb cyclone. Our teams in Carmel were deployed to manage damage assessments, street closures, and staff the warming center at the Carmel Youth Center. January 5th, we were called back to Pacific Grove to assist with the closure of Ocean View Boulevard and beaches following severe wave damage. And January 9th, I was tasked to lead Incident Command in Monterey and with our Carmel team deployed to manage numerous calls of downed trees, power lines, road closures, and flood evacuations in Carmel Valley, Carmel, Monterey, and Pacific Grove. Needless to say, it was an incredibly busy month. And all CERT team members performed beautifully. We're proud to serve our communities.
Yeah, I just wanted to just close in saying we're particularly grateful for the outstanding leadership we have from our acting police chief, Jeff Watkins, and also our fire chiefs, Panholzer, Collins, and Courtney. We look forward to 2023. You just look at the news and you can see natural disasters can occur anywhere. And so we're planning future training sessions and preparations for what is to come. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your service. Honestly, I really appreciate it. You guys have really been called upon pretty heavily this time. I normally don't comment on public comment, but that was really appropriate that you came forward. So thank you all for your hard work. Anybody else wishing to speak in the room today? If you do, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter and City Council members. This is Christy Hollenbeck from Stop Cell Towers in Carmel neighborhoods. We thank the city for working collaboratively with the citizen-funded attorney Andrew Campanelli. Recently, I had the pleasure of speaking to Susan Foster, who was instrumental in getting cell towers removed from fire stations in California. She began hearing more and more stories of firefighters who literally could not function on the job. Once cell towers were activated on or adjacent to their fire stations, they could no longer function without severe headache, inability to sleep, foggy thinking. Susan's actions led to a moratorium on the placement of cell towers on fire stations. More recently, Susan helped to write the fire safety section and the CEQA section, which is the California Environmental Qualifications Act, in the ordinances for Encinitas and Malibu, California. She was kind enough to share her brilliantly written white paper with us. The paper is thoroughly researched, and we ask that the city include these sections in our wireless ordinance. Foster makes it clear in her paper that cell towers and related telecommunication equipment can cause wildfires. Each cell tower is an electrical device. When electrical devices fail, electrical fires can be triggered. Cell tower fires cannot be extinguished through conventional means. Anyone putting water on a cell tower fire before the electricity is cut, which can take up to 60 minutes, will be electrocuted. Imagine a cell tower fire in a Carmel neighborhood in the midst of a windstorm like the ones we had a few weeks ago, and there's nothing you can do until PG&E cuts the power. According to Foster, 4 major fires have been initiated, at least in part, due to telecommunication equipment within the last 15 years in Southern California alone, costing well over $6 billion in damages. Hopefully, she will be able to speak at our meeting March 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Anybody else in the room wishing to speak tonight? Items that are not on the agenda.
Great. Thank you. Amy Herzog and Jeff Burkhart with Visit Carmel, the destination marketing organization for Carmel-by-the-Sea. And we spoke about this same topic last week, but we had some technical difficulties. So, and for the benefit of the public, we wanted to speak again, if you wouldn't mind indulging a little bit of repetition. We appreciate it. We're excited that this week we launched our new Destination Stewardship Initiative. Now, Visit Carmel is a destination marketing organization for the city. Our mission is to promote and brand Carmel-by-the-Sea as a world-class destination, but it's also really to drive overnight stays during the times when we need it the most. That's our mission. But our vision has been and continues to be to have a commitment to promoting safe, responsible, and respectful travel, which in turn safeguards the destination for the future, for visitors and residents alike. And so with that, our board is really taking a stronger commitment to that vision. The Love Carmel Like a Local logo is really just a symbol of the commitment that the board is making, and that we as marketers are making toward that initiative. And we're doing that in almost every way that we have in terms of marketing tactics available to us. Do I need to pause? Okay. So one of those more technical problems. So we've put together expanded content on our website, for instance. So a lot of the marketing that we're putting out there leads everyone to what does it mean to love like Carmel like a local? A little bit more about why we are asking people to be stewards of our destination. A little bit about the history of the community and how Carmel was founded on a lot of these values. And even going so far as to explain how visitors can get more involved in contributing to protecting the destination, for example. And if you go down Ocean Avenue now, you will see new banners up there. They are not permanent. They are made of fabric. They are banners. Our goal in putting them up there was to create a very welcoming and friendly message that welcomes people to our village and invites them to enjoy sustainably, but also implores respect our beaches, cherish natural beauty, and explore mindfully. And we feel like the balance of that messaging is setting the right tone for stewardship. And so this is just an idea of, you know, the way they look now. And I don't know about you, but when I drive down the street, it makes me feel very proud and filled with pride about the community. And it's, I think it really is, with the heart, connotes a strong positive message. We've also got some wood signage, and as you can see, it's an improvement over what could possibly end up on the side of the newsstands right now. So we think it's kind of sweet, looks good. And to talk about some of our other marketing components is Jeff.
Hey, destination stewardship is a major part of many destinations across the U.S. It's not just something we're doing here. So we're adopting some really great practices. And so as visitors come here, we want them to be mindful and keep Carmel looking beautiful for generations to come. The video we created was more to showcase the overall initiative, and we are also using it in advertisements that actually reach people as they're in market. So if you've just arrived as a visitor, you may see a Facebook or Instagram video. Cherish our natural beauty, be mindful of our community, and please visit responsibly. Love Carmel like a local. So the video's playing. We know that people engage in it. We've been running these ads in the past, and people really respond positively. In addition to that, we have carousel ads that similar kinds of messaging, but talks about recycle in the right place and pack it in and pack it out, and basic rules of being mindful of the environment while you're here, and be mindful of our community as well. So that messaging is going to reach not only visitors as they're coming into town, but some locals that are remarketed too as part of the marketing, and all of which will link to the site. And lastly, when we want to wear our sort of civic pride, we feel that this messaging really carries to visitors as well as locals, and everybody is sort of part of the bigger picture. And the swag, as we call it, is that simple.
All righty. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Technology was a little bit better than last time. Well done.
Thank goodness.
Is there anybody else in the building wishing to speak before I go out to Zoom land? I don't see anybody. There was a 415 number that had his hand up first, or her hand up. Is that, okay. Chris Mitchell, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Assistant Administrator, Rerick, City Council members. I don't know if I'm confused. Marnie very kindly invited us to attend the meeting because of the first item, but does it count as an agenda item? Should we be talking, or should we wait until the 28th?
Well, my thought was we wait till the 28th, but you go ahead and make a comment under public comment.
I can keep it very brief if you like.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah. So basically, just to confirm I'm Chris Mitchell from Esperanza Carmel. We're an investment development company in Carmel. As I said, Marnie very kindly invited us to the meeting. It's just in reference to the housing feasibility report. Just to confirm publicly, we're very interested in this report and would be delighted to work with the city with regards to building more housing. We'd commend Chris Blakely from Eco Northwest on a very well-written, well-researched and written report. We think it gives a good roadmap for the next 8 years to achieve these pretty ambitious housing goals. We had some takeaways from the report, but I feel it's probably more appropriate to wait to the 28th. We did have a few questions, but again, probably they're better to wait to the 28th, unless you prefer we pose them now.
No, I think, Chris, the 28th will be a much more productive format for you.
Fine by me. Fine by me. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris, for your interest. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Public comment. I don't see anybody. I'll close the public comment period. Bring it back then to council members. Administrator comments. Chip?
I actually don't have anything to say, Mr. Mayor. I know, it's a first, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Brian?
There was no reportable action out of the closed session yesterday.
Council members, looking to my right, Bobby Richards. To my left, Karen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As you know, I was assigned the task of being on the Regen Board. That's our Monterey Regional Waste Management board, and it has a new name, Regen. Carrie Tice, our retired council member, did an excellent job of representing Carmel on that board as during her years. And I just wanted to tell you, if you haven't visited Regen, you can call and take a tour. We have an absolutely first-rate, state-of-the-art facility there, which is doing all kinds of incredible things. And I know recently, with the food waste program getting into gear with Proposition 1383 in the state, where we have to repurpose our food waste by putting it in the green can. It's caused a few people some concerns and problems about how they do it without having a mess. And I tell you, if you can, make sure that you read what they send out to you in the packet on Wasteline, how to use and how to compost properly so that you don't have a mess, and also the reasons. I thought I would mention one, why you can't use bags, because many people have said they want to use compostable bags. This is such an innovative program that they're using. This waste will be made into high-level compost to be used on agricultural fields. We don't want anything in that waste that could contaminate those agricultural fields. So it's extremely important to do it correctly. And if we all get with the program, we can figure it out. You can freeze your compostables if you don't want it, and then put it out the day of collection and so on. But please, read the Wasteline that you get and be part of the solutions that are happening for climate change, food waste, repurposing, et cetera. So I'm delighted to serve on that committee because I was one of the people to start the green diversion program at the Big Sur International Marathon, where we went from having dumpster after dumpster going to the landfill, and now we divert over 94% of the waste from that event from going into the landfill. And one more note, our landfill keeps getting extended for how long it will last because of really great management out there. We just okayed new GPS devices that as the landfill is filled and these machines run over what is going in there and compact it, it will tell them where they need to go back and compact some more or do other things to it, so that as that settles, we get more space for a longer landfill life, and that's really important. So I look forward to reporting to you more about waste in the future.
Thank you, Karen. Is there anybody else? Alessandra, Jeff?
Yes, thank you. I don't usually do this, talk about employees that are leaving. You know, we see employees sort of come and go as a part of their professional lives. You know, they leave for a variety of reasons, and I wanted to give a shout out first to the forester, Sarah. It's been a pleasure working with you, and then to Anya Smartelet, who is leaving the city after 5 years here. She was our environmental compliance manager. She has done a tremendous job. I know everybody on the council has worked with her in one form or another. You know, she was an invaluable aid to Councilmember Tice and I when we were working on the climate change initiative over the course of the past 4 years. And although I will really miss her, I wish Anya, I think today was her last day. Is that right? I wish you all my best.
Thank you, Jeff. I know we all join in you on with wishing both of those women the best. They're really valuable employees. I hate to lose them. Thank you for those kind words. All right, I don't have anything particularly on my mind. Moves us then on to the consent calendar. We have items 1 through 19 on the consent calendar. Jeff, do you want to pull number 4 as the traditional item?
Yeah, I will. Traditional, as is not, I assume this will be the last time. Pull item number 4.
That's me continuing to meet the needs to go ahead and meet teleconference. We'll via teleconference. Anybody else on council wishing to pull an item? Anybody in the public wishing to pull an item? See no one, bring it back here for motion. Guys?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve items 1 through 3 and 5 through 19.
Excellent.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Nova, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Jerema?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Potter?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I know somebody was inclined to move to item number 4. We could get together with the consent calendar. Guys.
I'll make a motion that we move our
Item number 4.
item number 4, move item number 4 to the consent.
I'll second it. Any other discussion? All right, all those, Nova, could we call the roll, please?
Councilmember Barron?
No.
Councilmember Jerema?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Potter?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
All righty, that then moves us on to public hearing items. We have one item under public hearings, that's consider ordinance 2022-007, first reading, amending Carmel Municipal Code, section 17.54.04, 17.28.010, and 17.70.020 to prohibit timeshare and fractional interest uses, as well as advertising and sale thereof in a manner fully in conformity with California Coastal Act. This item was continued from December 6th and also January 10th.
I enjoy
Brandon.
writing those descriptions so that you have to spend that long.
Thank you very much, Brandon.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome. Sorry about that. We'll try to cut those back in the future. So we are here to talk about an ordinance amending our municipal code sections that deal with timeshares. We've been here a couple times, but have continued this. So we're back. We're bringing to you a recommendation from the city's planning commission. So currently, our municipal code already prohibits timeshares. I want to make that clear up front, and I'll probably say that a few times throughout the presentation. Our code already prohibits timeshares. The purpose of this ordinance is to add a little bit of language to make it more clear what else and how we prohibit the extra parts of timeshares, such as advertising and things like that. So a little bit of an overview. October, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to this body to adopt the ordinance as is. They did also recommend to you, and you will see this in the resolution that was attached from the Planning Commission, that in the near future, the full City Council have a policy discussion regarding potentially the removal or modification of the prohibition on timeshares. This wasn't a unanimous decision, but there were members of there that felt that policy decision needed to be had. So we've had a couple of meetings here that have been continued. Summary of the proposed changes, you can see the code sections that are here. It's really simplifying some definitions, updating a definition to make it consistent, and most notably, it's a prohibition on advertising and updating to definitions of what is a timeshare. So this says what the ordinance is doing, and I think one of the conversations that's important to have is what the ordinance is not doing. So with that, I'd like to ask, who I believe is on the line, Sergio Rudin, who's with Mr. Pierrick's firm and our expert on timeshares. Maybe, Sergio, if you can chime in just for a quick second and talk about what the ordinance is not doing with respect to those people that form private LLCs, and if Mr. Rarig and I and some friends decide to buy a house under an LLC and just share it amongst ourselves.
So, thank you, Brandon, and thank you, council members, for having me. I think it's important for both the council and the public to understand that most of the changes that are being made and proposed under this ordinance are not substantive. As Brandon mentioned, the city code already in several places prohibits timeshares. It's important for, I think, the public to understand that the city's definition of timeshare already prohibits the formal subdivision of time under any sort of arrangement to the exclusive use of real property. So anytime that you have a formal arrangement by which you subdivide the rights to use real property in a way that is, a binding legal arrangement, that constitutes a timeshare under the city's existing ordinance. This ordinance would clarify and simplify the city's existing definitions, but it wouldn't prohibit folks who want to co-own a house from co-owning a house, provided that they don't subdivide their interests in such a manner as to exclude the other co-owners. So if, say family members decide to own real property together, and they all want to do that, that itself is not prohibited. It's what is prohibited is the subdivision and legal assignment of rights to exclusive use. So if, for example, folks own a property together and then they have a contract that says that, certain persons get certain months, that's, regardless of whether or not that's under a contract as part of an operating agreement and an LLC, or in the recorded deed of the transfer of the property, that would be prohibited under the ordinance, and it's also prohibited under the city's existing code. So that's an overview of how the city's existing regulations work. I think one of the revisions here is that the ordinance specifically mentions fractional interest uses, but that's really a response to the increased awareness in the public about co-ownership under LLCs, and it's not a substantive change in terms of what is allowed or prohibited under the city's law.
Thanks, Sergio. Okay, so back over to the presentation. Sebastian, if you wouldn't mind flipping it back up there on the screen for us. Excellent. So just a little recap of the previous meeting. If you recall, we did come to this body last month. We made a couple of minor amendments to the ordinance that came out of the Planning Commission. Just an additional recital to confirm that what we're doing is consistent with the city's general plan. We had language in there about the other codes and regulations, but we added this, and a couple of other non-substantive changes to correct dates. None of these changes would necessitate going back to the Planning Commission because there's nothing in the form or the substance that was changed. And so we're here today requiring 2 readings. So this is your first reading of the ordinance. One of the actions will be for the city attorney to read the ordinance into the first reading. Eventually, if adopted, this will also need to go to the Coastal Commission for certification. So your options for tonight are to hold the first reading, keep the ordinance as is, and move on to that second reading. You could provide edits, and if those edits are substantial enough, we would need to hold another first reading. Or you could also continue the item to a future date with some other direction to staff. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, but I am available for questions. The city attorney and Sergio are also available.
Are there any questions to staff by council members at this time?
I may have a question, and I'm not sure if it's for staff or if this would be the appropriate time to ask this, but when it comes to property taxes, do timeshares get reassessed as people go off of a timeshare, or do property taxes stay throughout eternity at the price that they purchased it?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure about that. It's something that we can get better direction probably from the county assessor's office. It's something we can follow up on if you'd like to come back to the second reading if we get there.
Because I know if it's held in an LLC, if 50% of the ownership is changed, then it automatically readjusts to the time.
Yeah, there's enough technical stuff there. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. So I can find out for you though by the next meeting. Yeah.
Thanks, Brent.
All right. I don't see any other questions by council members. I'll open up to the public for questions or comments. 3-minute limitation on that testimony. If you'd come forward, I'd appreciate it. Is there anybody in the room wishing to speak to this item? Don't be shy.
Good evening. Hi there, thank you. You'll have to forgive me. In order to get all of my thoughts out, I have this written and scribed down, so I'll have to read. Good evening to Mayor Potter and council staff and to the community. My name is Nasim Oil, and I am the Public Affairs Manager for Picasso. I am here today before you and on behalf of our company, but also on behalf of Andreas Matson, who you've also heard from through several meetings prior to this one, who's also a Carmel native. And I'm also here on behalf of the homeowners here who co-own their home together on Dolores. Tonight you will hear testimony from homeowners that live in your community and that also live in your community but also in businesses that operate here. Recommending that you oppose this ordinance before you and instead work together with those of us in the housing industry to develop a solution for co-ownership in Carmel-by-the-Sea. Over the last year, we've attempted to continue the dialogue with you and your staff in an effort to explain our business model and discuss a path forward crafting policy that would work for all homeowners in the city, but we weren't able to get there. Picasso has continued taking steps to meet with the community members and organizations in an attempt to learn about the concerns in the community, and we are committed to continuing that dialogue. With all things considered, though, it does take time. Rather than rush through this ordinance, I would encourage you to really listen to the testimony tonight from homeowners who co-own their homes. They own and enjoy those homes like no differently than any other second homeowner in Carmel. They simply choose to co-own those homes and share that home as many generations have before them. This is a common practice in Carmel, considering that 15% of the housing stock own their homes this way. Picasso simply modernized this approach using a smart stay technology in our app. Put it another way, it's a Google Calendar in an app. In closing, I ask you to oppose this ordinance today, and perhaps instead consider creating a working group on behalf of City Council to draft good neighbor policies for co-ownership in the city. We still have some road ahead of us, considering the proposed ordinance today. We'll have a second hearing, and also we'll need to go to the Coastal Commission. Considering the significant and unintended consequences for those hundreds who co-own in this city, I have to believe that there is room for us to move forward and craft policy together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in here? Maybe if you were intending to speak, you could queue up behind Nancy here. That way we save a little travel time. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, and thank you for all of what you do. I'm Nancy Toomey, speaking on behalf of me being a resident in this community, of a full-time homeowner as well. I fully support this ordinance refresh that's on the table to provide clarity and Christmas to where our previous documentation is reflected. I do, however, encourage at a future date, when there is capacity for the city to consider a broader and relook at timeshares, vacation rentals, and yes, short-term rentals, and kind of put all of those models out on the table and to educate the community on what the differences are, what the pros and the cons are, and to really align to all of those models so that we're not making decisions in isolation from one another. So I'd like a holistic view towards all of those kind of partial ownership type models and a big picture view. So I would appreciate that as a future project when time and capacity of the staff allows, but would recommend strongly that we implement this ordinance as you have it proposed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Ann Coughlin. You may remember me from the December meeting when I attended in person to give comments on this proposed ordinance. I tried to be here in person last month, but unfortunately had to cancel my flights and travel plans due to the rainstorms in California. I live in Denver, Colorado, but I am also a second homeowner in Carmel-by-the-Sea. My husband, Mike, and I own 25% of the home near 13th and Dolores, which is currently managed for us by Picasso. Mike and I have been coming to Carmel for 29 years. The first time we came to town was for our honeymoon. After that, almost every year with our 2 children, we came for spring break for a week to 10 days. Since our kids started college nearly 10 years ago, we had rented a home in Carmel for 4 to 6 weeks every year in March. When we purchased our home on Dolores almost a year ago, we have been able to expand our time in this beautiful village to almost 3 months per year, typically 1 month or more at a time. Mike and I are Carmel homeowners who, like so many others, share the ownership of our home with a small number of other families. We take pride in our home, we care about our home, we invest in our home, we engage with the community, we are good neighbors, and we are huge supporters and fans of the restaurants, galleries, shops, and local community activities. We are excited to continue to bring friends, family, and any future grandchildren to come to the ocean, the 4th of July parade, the annual Christmas tree lighting, the farmers market, and all the other activities that make Carmel-by-the-Sea so special to us and have been such a big part of our lives already. I ask you to reject this ordinance and instead work on with the second homeowners like us who co-own homes with other families. We are no different than any other second homeowner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Adam Pinteritz. I'm the Government and Community Affairs Director for the Monterey County Association of Realtors. I thank the council members and the staff for all your time and hard work. And I usually don't speak about other people who speak in public comment, but I've had the chance to meet Anne and her family, and they're just such wonderful residents here. And it makes me realize that there's a distinction here that's effectively between recurring residents and ongoing residents, but they're still residents of this city. I also find it appropriate that earlier in this meeting we we're presented with the fact that we're at a crossroads of both the housing element and destination stewardship. This is a town that is at least partially dependent on tourism for its thriving businesses and also has significant housing concerns. And so I think it appropriate that we have this conversation more or less all at the same time. I especially want to thank the city staff and attorney. You have an endless task in preserving the qualities of this city amid ever-changing regulatory needs. I don't envy your task. I support the desire to protect the city, modernize code, and address our share of the regional housing shortage. To that end, I must ask you, do you have an accurate count of the single-owner homes? Is it dozens or hundreds? Have you been to see them? I have, in fact. I've seen a few second homes. They're very lovely and mostly empty. And people have a right to own second homes. There's no doubt about it. You're good luck fighting that one. So, the question really becomes then, how many second homes could be consolidated through innovative new ownership models? How many mostly empty second homes could become available for ongoing residents of the city? And so I guess I'll just close with asking the council, what is your intent? If your intent is to not address the secondary home ownership and low occupancy rates, then go ahead and move forward with this ordinance. If your intent is to take recurring residents like Anne and her family who invest in living here and treat them like tourists, then go ahead with this ordinance or this update. But if your intent is to comprehensively address your housing problems, then once again, I urge you, please, instead of moving forward with this, let's convene a stakeholder group and explore innovative solutions. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next speaker.
My name is William Hanson, and I would like to add a few comments here. I spoke last time and would speak again in favor of the council approving this amendment to the amendment to the city ordinance. Timeshares. Timeshares are, by legal definition, the arrangement or agreement in which parties share the ownership of or the right to use property. And I think the ownership of speaks to the functional or fractional ownership. Fractional ownership are shared ownerships of a vacation resort property which allocate the usage rights based on time. And time is the key word here. They are equated in the same way virtually in every state. Any time-based sharing of an asset falls within the legal definition of a timeshare. And we've already said back in the 80s, you didn't want timeshares. Now they come in with fractional ownership, which is in essence a shared deeded timeshare or direct titled ownership timeshare. As I said way back when I wrote a piece, an opinion in the Carmel Pine Cone, you could put lipstick on a pig. You can call it by different names, but it's still a pig. And that's what you have here. And the Conglins appear to be very nice people. That's not the point here. We're not discussing personalities here. We're talking about an ordinance to the city to prevent this type of activity, which I think is the correct thing to do. I urge the council to pass this ordinance and not kick the can down the road anymore. Get it done. And like I say, it has nothing to do with the co-owners of it's not legal. You're dealing with a time allocated asset here, which is a timeshare. And you've already said years ago that you didn't want that. So I would say pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, William. I appreciate it. Next speaker.
Mayor, Council, Community, my name is Richard Kreitman, and have a different take on this. In business, your best customers are repeat customers, and the business of Carmel is visitors, and our best visitors are repeat visitors. Hopefully, families who visit stay a while, respect the village, love it like a native, and spend money in our restaurants and businesses. And while they're not the TOT generating heads on beds, they generate a good deal of economic activity and revenue, and the average stay in one of our hotels is 1.3 nights or thereabouts. One of the best classes of these visitors are the families who've been renting the same Carmel home for the same month for many years, in some cases literally for generations, and people have spoken to that. These families love the community. They spend money all around town, and many of them support the arts. And of course, same for our second or third or fifth homeowners who in a sense are regular repeat visitors. Some are here only for a couple of weeks a year, others come for multiple months. So how is it bad for our community to turn one of these spare homes in the Golden Rectangle ghost town, a home visited a few weeks a year by a single wealthy family, to a home where 6 or 8 not quite as wealthy families show up for dozens of weeks a year, creating more of that preferred class of visitor? So perhaps, and this speaks to the item which says you maybe go, I encourage you to take a look at this as policy in a later meeting. But we consider an ordinance that turns this opportunity to our advantage rather than banning it. Crafting an ordinance that encourages the most desirable outcomes of a shared ownership and then discourages the undesirable ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next speaker.
My name is Mike Brown, resident of Carmel. First, let me just say that at the last CRA board meeting, they discussed this and unanimously voted for please to pass this ordinance. They totally support, the board totally supports passage of this ordinance. Second, if I may just digress, I have pages of things I want to say, but having sat in your shoes myself, I know it's one of the most tedious things to hear somebody stand up and repeat things. So if I may, I'd just like to get back to our preamble here. The city of Carmel-by-the-Sea is hereby determined to be primarily, essentially, and predominantly a residential city wherein business and commerce are in the past now proposed to be in the future subordinated. And I think that's a very important point to remember, that this is a residential community and the commercial world is trying to find any and all ways they can get in here. And so I'll save you the long notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the building wishing to speak?
Afternoon, Mayor, Council. I echo the thought of changing the council member Dramoff talked about changing our residential neighborhoods. And I think Picasso, by choosing their first venture, has chosen the exactly wrong place to start. Let me clarify. My name is Bill Cadell. I live across the street from the current Picasso house on Dolores between 13th and Santa Lucia. We have 24 homes. 24 of us, or half of those, are full-time residents. 3 are up for rental, and 1 is a Picasso, the current property. I will say the residents that are owners of that property are delightful people. I have nothing against the people themselves. I have a lot to say about the objectives of how this community could be changed over time in a rapid way. Now, And who are we? We are people, most of us have lived in our neighborhood. My wife and I have been there 23 years. 4 or 5 of us in this room have grown up in a little community called Piedmont, California. Maybe that'll ring a bell with somebody. Why is Piedmont, California relative to Carmel? Well, one, they historically came back and forth, and there was a community, a village, if you will, a property, a residential area that you would seek out to live. It was different. It was right in the middle of Oakland, and it did all of the things that shouldn't succeed in a big city. And I view Carmel exactly the same way. I view our neighbors that way. And why do I say about Picasso? Again, it's not the owners, it's not any of these people that have gained the property. What happens is the beehive of activity when they leave. For one thing, they can stay overnight. They can show up at 11, 12 o'clock at night, which has happened. They can leave at 6 in the morning. They can bring dogs off leash and run in our yards, which has happened. They, within their corporate website, if you have a ownership, you can stay maximum 14 days. Well, I thought we have a 30-day maximum or minimum rental code in this city. And so why is that a problem? Well, here comes these people, and it gets used. And credit them for having a website that obviously works. People are happy with it. I don't discount that. Here come the maintenance people, the trucks, the cars, the stuff, the people trying to get in the place, the delivery services are coming by, tapping on our doors. Where's the house? Where's this? Where's that? This doesn't happen with our established community, that if we have chosen to live, we have chosen to live in a residential community. We did not choose to live across from an inn or a hotel. And some of these people would say, well, where's the no vacancy sign or the vacancy sign? We've heard that. And that's the feeling. Now, if we lived next to the Colonial Terrace Inn and we bought here 20 years ago, there was a hotel, there was an inn, fine, we know the game. But I think if we want to destroy what we have as a special community, this would be a great way to do it and allow an LLC timeshare company come and take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate your testimony.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Simon Bull. I own Muse Gallery on Ocean Avenue, and I'm a Picasso owner in St. Helena. And I have enjoyed listening to a lot of these comments and speaking to many of you, although I did write to each member and didn't get back this time, but it's okay. I also was going to read the preamble, but it's already been read. But this emphasis on, let me just read it, the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea is hereby determined to be primarily, essentially, predominantly a residential city. Now, according to the data on your website, for whatever reason, whether it be market forces, poor leadership, or any other number of reasons, Carmel has been losing residents since 1989 and is becoming less and less of a residential community since that period of time. And we are discussing an ordinance which is seeking to go directly against the preamble here of reducing the number of residents in Carmel, by trying to put an emphasis and trying to go for the idea that we're looking forward, and I spoke to Councillor Barron about this, the idea that wouldn't it be wonderful if Carmel had, the majority of people, something like the 50s, like lots of people that were families living in the homes, full-time owners, but unfortunately, that sort of situation is no longer viable in Carmel because the majority of homes are here primarily for one reason only, and that is as financial instruments, which is something that has not been raised in this discussion so far, because the investment quality of owning a home, a second home in this town, is so appealing to Bay Area people and people from Texas and so on. But if you have an opportunity let's say we can't go back to the Carmel of the old days where it was fully residential. If we were able to go back to change the way that Carmel operates and have some of the homes that are currently empty as second homes, or just used by a single family that has it as a second home and lives there occasionally, wouldn't it be better to have 8 resident owners visiting the home, participating in the life of the city, and enjoying the community just like everybody else does? I don't see the benefit of empty homes becoming a prominent thing. My family, my son and his children that live in England, came over here in the fall, and they walked from my gallery to my home on Carmel Street for trick-or-treating. And there was only one house that was open for trick-or-treating because the rest of them were empty. And I want to ask you, I know that we've come up all this like fancy language about timeshare, but I would argue that the language that's been promoted to discuss fractional ownership as timeshare has been somewhat, the word maliciously or sort of, with hypocrisy or put in, this may be a bit strong, but it's been squeezed in to try to sort of shoehorn a certain category of ownership into another kind of category in order to create kind of anxiety. And I thank you for listening to me. I've had my 3 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you,
Please
sir.
Vote against it, and let's discuss it and make it work.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anybody in the building here wishing to speak tonight? I don't see anybody. I'll take it out to public. It'll be Mike Coughlin, then Janice Bradner, then Tim Tooney, then Steve Thomas in order of speech. Mike, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mike Coughlin, and I certainly love Carmel like a local. You just heard from my wife, Ann, who shared that we honeymooned in Carmel 29 years ago, and our family has spent hundreds of nights in Carmel over the last 3 decades. A year ago, we realized our dream, and we became Carmel homeowners when we purchased a home on Dolores. And like hundreds of other homeowners in Carmel, we bought ours in partnership with a few other families. Ann and I are 25% owners of our home. We now spend 3 months a year in Carmel, usually for a full month or so at a time, nearly 100 nights per year. We are genuinely blessed, and we feel truly grateful. So I'm sure you can understand our concern over the proposed ordinance that effectively criminalizes this incredibly common form of co-ownership. The staff asserts that co-owned homes are problematic if the owners agree to share the home according to a schedule, generally with one owner at a time in the home. Well, honestly, as you dig into the arrangements and agreements of the hundreds of existing co-owned homes in Carmel, and that's of course homes that are owned by LLCs or trusts or partnerships or tenants in common, I'm certain that you're going to learn that many, maybe even most co-owners use their homes according to some form of an equitable agreed upon schedule, a formal schedule, a schedule that falls within the terms of this ordinance. And that's really so that each owner gets periods of the full use of the home for their own family each year, and so that holidays and prime dates are rotated. Those schedules might be set by passing around a calendar and writing names down, or by texts, or by emails, or by an annual draft party, but schedules are routinely used and they are agreed to. And honestly, that's exactly what we do. We use a schedule to respect each other's use of the home, and so that we can make our own plans. There is fundamentally nothing new here. Ann and I peacefully use, share, and love our second home in the same way that other families have enjoyed their co-owned homes in Carmel for years and years. Honestly, probably even on the very blocks where each one of you lives. We're also typical in that we share the expenses of our home. We hire a management company, in our case Picasso, to keep our home in tip-top condition, and we collectively make decisions about how to enjoy and use our shared home. I urge you to reject this ordinance. As one of your planning commissioners stated during the October Planning Commission meeting on this topic, and I'd like to quote him verbatim, he said, "A whole bunch of citizens will be in a position of being guilty of a misdemeanor if this passes." In closing, I'd like to reiterate that Ann and I are truly the most enthusiastic and involved second homeowners that could live in Carmel, and we are truly Carmel's biggest fans. It is genuinely special to us. It is home to us. It has been a part of our family, and we are part of the community for 3 decades. And we hope to have 3 more decades to come in your beautiful village. I'd also just like to say in passing that we are totally open to discussions around good neighbor policies. We certainly don't want anyone to be inconvenienced when we are residing in our home, just as we don't want other homeowners to inconvenience us. So where discussions can occur on how to make each and every one of us better neighbors, we're certainly open to that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, I think, who's next? Janice?
Hi, I'm Janice Bradner. I'm a 24-year resident of Carmel-by-the-Sea, and as a resident, I totally support the changes to the ordinance to restrict timeshares like Picasa in Carmel. The tenants of a Picasa property that the owners can only use for 2 weeks at a time fall into the very definition of a short-term rental, which we all frown upon. I've had friends who have purchased timeshares in places like Maui, and if they couldn't use their 2-week time slot, they could sell it to somebody else, which also makes that a short-term rental. The house to the north of me may or may not have been purchased by an LLC, but there has been a parade of vehicles at the property, most of which are only there for 1 or maybe 2 or 3 days. Sometimes I've seen license plates from Alaska and Utah in the same week. It's clearly being used as a short-term rental, and these renters do not have the same sense of respect for the property or for our city that true residents have. As residents, we're striving to stave off the intrusion of so-called owners who do not have the sense of community that those of us who live here every day have. We want Carmel to be recognized as a true community that values its residents and nurtures its culture. Thank you.
Hey, Janice. Tim, I think you're next. Tim Toomey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Potter and city council members. Yeah, I am also in support of the city's planning commission recommendations to adopt the amendments in the proposed ordinance to simplify things. And I would ask you to pass this ordinance. However, a second part of this recommendation is to, excuse me, is to have a policy level discussion in the future about whether or not timeshare should continue to be prohibited in the village. And I'm kind of a little conflicted on this. I mean, listening to a lot of the testimony, there are, some good pros and some good cons around certain models. I mean, and like Nancy was saying, we really don't, we really don't understand the differences between like a vacation rental and the Picasa model and other models that we're using in town. So I would like to see the ordinance get approved to simplify things and to get that taken care of. But I would also like to see this policy level discussion happen sooner than later, if there's resources and, we can make a commitment to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Steve Thomas, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have been asked by Eric Colson to read a letter into the record on his behalf, as he was not able to attend tonight. Full transparency, I am a representative of Picasso, but I'm simply reading his words into the record, which say, "Dear City Council, I'm an owner, one of the owners of the home on Dolores, and it is the single home managed by Picasso in the city of Carmel. I'm writing in regards to the proposed ordinance 2022-007 and recommend City Council oppose the ordinance and work with stakeholders instead across the community and housing industry to better understand the significant impacts limiting fractional ownership in Carmel poses. I live in the Bay Area, yet I grew up visiting my father, who has lived in Carmel-by-the-Sea for nearly 30 years. While I wasn't a resident growing up, I spent enough time here that I became part of the community. I knew the neighbors and local shop owners, and I participated in local pickup sports. I became a regular at various restaurants and pubs, and I attended many of the local events and social gatherings. This is the experience I wanted for my family and why we purchased a home through Picasso. Carmel is not a place where we visit just once as tourists, but rather is a place that we consider our home. Hotels and conventional timeshares simply do not provide the community aspect that my family seeks. We happily pay our property taxes even though our kids are not in the district. This is what you do when you are part of a community. The proposed ordinance will end the community participation for my family and others like it. We'd still likely visit, although far less often, but the experience would become much more transient and without the deep connection to the community that we truly seek. Please don't deny our family and others our home. We value being part of such an amazing and blessed community. Sincerely, Eric Colson. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? Nova?
Just me.
Lucinda Lloyd.
Lucinda Lloyd. Cindy Lloyd.
Mayor Potter, members of the council, my name is Cindy Lloyd. I'm a native of Carmel and have lived here off and on for a majority of my life. I fully support this ordinance. I think the people who have spoken today, who are part-time residents through their whatever vehicle that offers them that opportunity, are perfectly nice people, and it's wonderful that they love Carmel the way we love Carmel. But I think in order to maintain our community as a residential community, we need to support this ordinance and limit any type of timeshare, no matter what the structure is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Nova?
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, not hearing anybody from the public, I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to council for questions or deliberation, comments. Okay, to my left.
Mayor Potter, I'd like to support the ordinance and waive reading of ordinance tonight and support passage of this. That's a motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay, I was going to say I'd second, but Jeff, you got it?
Yes.
Okay, okay. We have a motion and a second. Karen, do you need to speak to your motion, or are you clear?
No, I would like to just read one thing. In the local land use authority, the kind of the Bible on land use, protection of a city's character, stability, and soul has served to justify invocation of the police power. In Ewing versus the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea, homeowners challenged the constitutionality of a zoning ordinance that prohibited commercial use of residential property for remuneration for fewer than 30 consecutive days. And I won't cite the number, it's here though. The homeowners claimed the ordinance was a taking, was void as arbitrary and vague, and violated their right of privacy. In ruling for the city, the court held that the ordinance was a proper exercise of the city's land use authority under its police power to enhance and maintain the residential character of the city. The court stated that this is a wholly proper purpose of zoning. It stands to reason that the residential character of a neighborhood is threatened when a significant number of homes, and back then it was at least 12% in this case, according to the record, are occupied not by permanent residents, but by a stream of tenants staying a weekend, a week, or even 29 days. Transient rentals undoubtedly affect the essential character of a neighborhood and the stability of a community. Short-term tenants have little interest in public agencies or in the welfare of the citizenry. They do not participate in local government, coach Little League, or join the hospital guild. They do not lead a scout troop, volunteer at the library, or keep an eye on an elderly neighbor. Literally, they are here today and gone tomorrow without engaging in the sort of activities that weld and strengthen a community. I think it's very important that we protect our community, and I believe that the Picasso fractional ownership has certainly inflated prices for one thing, but has brought a different feeling to the community. So that's why I'm supporting the ordinance.
Thank you, Karen. Jeff?
Thank you. What we have before us tonight is a simplification of a simplification and a sort of a clarification of the rules that we have on our books regarding timeshares. I support this ordinance because that's a good thing for the city to do legally. I would say, you know, when I was thinking about the remarks I was going to make, I would have to say that my remarks basically echoed Mike Brown's remarks, and I also started with Ordinance 98. So in the interest of brevity, I'll just thank you, Mr. Brown, for making those points, and that's what I have to say.
Well said. Bobby?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have a question about some of the things that came up tonight, and maybe I think this might be best asked by a Picasso representative, if that's okay, Mayor?
Yes, you may.
Can somebody from Picasso? So a couple times it was mentioned today that people would come for shorter than 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Is that allowed? Can somebody come in for 5 days if you're a fractional owner?
So there is no stay limitations in our operating agreement. So it is equally owned through 7, 6, 8 families. However many families own that home through the LLC, they can, you know, stay as they wish. I mean, there is, you know, they equally own, and they you know,
so
calendar the time as they need to.
So if everybody said, I'm going to come every 6th, 5th for 5 days, they could. So they could stay for 5 days and leave, come back in 2 weeks, stay for 5 days.
If they're scheduling their time through the smart technology app that we have, they can easily do so. So if they want to stay for 5 days, if they decide that they want to stay, you know, whatever the time frame is that they're afforded, they can do so.
Okay. And then the other thing is, do you have that answer to the question about the taxes?
I don't, but I can certainly find out for you, and I can certainly follow up with the council.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
And as that was pointed out earlier, that can be done between now and the time of the second reading. So, Alessandra?
I wanted to thank Councilmember Ferlito for the excellent quote she had about the land use, and I agree with Mr. Hanson, Mr. Brown, Mr. Cadell, Ms. Bradner, and Ms. Lloyd. We heard the familiar saying lipstick on a pig. There's another familiar saying that also fits here. If it looks and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Regardless of what Picasso says, it is a timeshare which we have forbidden since 1988. Just take a look at these examples. You cannot leave your belongings in one of these homes. You can't leave your clothes, your photos, your personal mementos, golf clubs. It's not even your furniture. And if you walk in when it's not your time to be there, you're basically trespassing. No community wants this. It's being fought all up and down of California. I'm going to defend Carmel-by-the-Sea's character and its residents who don't want this. It is out of our village character, and it violates our timeshare ordinance. So I support this ordinance.
Thank you. I'll weigh in now too, I guess. I'm going to support the ordinance. I think it's basically the commercialization of our private neighborhoods. I think it's unfortunate that this is happening. I think it's timeshares, it's short-term rentals masquerading as timeshares. So I think it's, for me, I'm going to be supporting the motion. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, I have just in the, I did ask, you know, the tax question that Councilmember Richards asked, I did ask a number of months ago. And I also, with Bobby, am very interested in the answer as to how these properties are reassessed when the ownership interest changes. And I would again ask staff to come back with an answer, if you can, by the time we get to the next.
Added a majority vote to that, yeah.
We'll do our best, Council.
Okay, Councilor?
Yes, I'm going to read the title now. It's ordinance number 2022-007, an ordinance amending the Carmel-by-the-Sea Municipal Code to prohibit timeshare and fractional interest uses, as well as advertising and sale thereof in a manner fully in conformity with the Coastal Act, Public Resources Code Section 30510 et sec.
Okay, with that clarification, Nova, would you call the roll, please?
If it could be made clear that the motion that's being voted upon now is to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance I just read.
Would you like us to read that?
No, you don't need to. I just wanted to make it clear what you're voting on.
So do I need to make a new motion?
No,
Okay.
you're fine, but it's been a while since you made the motion, so I just wanted to kind of
All right.
restate it so it's clear in everybody's mind.
Thank you.
All right, Nova?
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Dramoff?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Potter?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All righty, that brings us on then to orders of business for the evening. Thank you, public, for your patience with that issue. Appreciate it. Very well, professionally done. Receive an update on AB 2449, teleconferencing rules of attendance at meetings of legislative bodies. Who's handling that? City Attorney.
Yeah, just give me a second to get to that. I'm going to wait just a second, Mayor. We've got some people moving around.
All righty. Floor is
All right,
yours.
so the purpose of this item is to provide you with an update on what's referenced as AB 2449. That is the teleconferencing rules for attendance at meetings of legislative bodies. This was to basically receive the item. There's no action that's required. So with the passage of 2449, there are basically now 3 ways for council members to attend a council meeting through the use of teleconferencing. There is the so-called traditional teleconferencing rules that are in Government Code Section 54953B. That remains in effect, has been for many years. And one of the primary provisions of those sections are that if there's a council member who is unable to attend a meeting, if they're out of town or ill, then they, let's say they're out of town at a hotel, they would need to post the agenda on the door of wherever it is they're staying, and members of the public would have access to that location to make a public comment. So that's the so-called traditional method for teleconferencing. There's another provision that I believe you're familiar with, which is AB 361. That one is the one that we've been operating under for the last few years. It was motivated by the COVID epidemic, and that's the one that allows council members to attend remotely, and it could be an entirely remote meeting. The first traditional method that I described, you have to have at least a majority of the council members present, but with AB 361, you could have a meeting that is entirely Zoom or partially Zoom or whatever your remote format might be. So the fact is that the AB 361 is in theory going to be on the books until January 1 of 2024. However, it will end when the governor declares that the COVID emergency ends, and it has been information has been available from the state that the governor intends to end that declaration on February 28th of 2023. So assuming the governor does that, then that would be the end of 361 and the end of its provisions. So earlier this evening, when the council voted to approve that resolution, that will remain in effect unless and until it is ended by the governor ending the emergency, or we get until January of 24. So the third method is AB 2449. That was the one that became effective on January 1 of 2023. That is a method to allow teleconferencing. And before I go into what the rules are about the teleconferencing under that, I want to emphasize that even with any of these methods, the city can continue to have hybrid meetings. So you could have members of the public who wish to attend remotely. They will still be able to attend remotely regardless of which of these teleconferencing methods are used. So under AB 2449, there's many rules here. They're in the agenda report. I don't intend to read all of them, but there must be, as with the traditional method, at least a quorum of the legislative body must be present. And then the remaining members can remotely participate in 2 situations. One is when there is just cause, and the code defines what just cause means, and it could include child care or caregiving of a parent that requires the member to participate remotely, a contagious illness that prevents the member from attending, a need related to a physical or mental disability, or travel while on business. And then if you're going to do that, you must notify the legislative body at the earliest opportunity, including at the start of their meeting, of the need to participate remotely, and provide a general description of the circumstances under one of those items that I just mentioned above. So that would be just cause. The other situation would be emergency circumstances, and that means that there's been a physical or family medical emergency that prevents a member from attending in person. So again, there must be the request to the legislative body to participate remotely, and the action at their request is taken by the legislative body to approve the attendance remotely. So there's a bunch of additional rules. There's 9 of them listed in the agenda report. I don't intend to read all 9 of them, but they're there for your review. I'll just mention, for example, one of them is that a member may not participate in meetings solely by teleconferencing for more than 3 consecutive months, or 20% of the regular meetings for the agency within a calendar year. So this basically is a law that is intended to restrict the opportunity to attend remotely from what AB 361 allowed. So you've got, in summary, 3 teleconferencing methods: the traditional method that I spoke of first, the AB 361, which is what we've been operating under for the last few years, and then this new section, AB 2449, where there's a showing of a just cause or there's emergency circumstances. So I am prepared to respond to questions if there are any.
Are there any questions by council members?
Yes. You mentioned for travel, is that, or business, excuse me, when you're traveling for business, is that personal or business for the?
That would be travel while on business of the legislative body.
You could be a babysitter. You could be a babysitter on business.
Well, I'm just saying what the 4 are, and you're right. One of the Councilmember Ferlito, you were addressing, I believe, the 4th one, which is, as indicated in the report, travel while on business of the legislative body or another state or local agency. As Mayor Pro Tem Richards is saying, there is another provision, which is if there's child care or caregiving of a child, parent, et cetera, that requires a member to participate remotely. And the other 2, so as long as we've hit 2 of the 4, contagious illness or a need related to physical or mental disability.
Any other questions of Brian before I open up to the public? I don't see anybody. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item? I'm not surprised. Okay, well, I guess there's nobody out there that's interested, so bring it back to council for direction. If there's no formal action necessary, just another question or comments. I do appreciate the clarification on that, Brian. Most appropriate.
So let's say before the next council meeting, I wake up sick and I decide to use, and we're in AB 2449 territory, and I decided that I will use AB 2449 as my reason for participating remotely. Who do I tell?
You could tell the city administrator or the city clerk. There's nothing in the code that says who the person is that you contact, but what the code says is that the member must notify the legislative body at the earliest opportunity. So presumably, once you've made your contact with the city administrator, city clerk, whoever that might be, that would then get communicated to the legislative body at its meeting of the need and provide a general description of the circumstances.
So if I wake up sick and then Councilmember Dramov wakes up sick and then Councilmember Ferlito wakes up sick, then we have an issue because we only have 2 people. We have 2 people. We only have 2 people.
That's right. You have to have a majority of the members must attend in person.
Regardless, you must post a notice outside the door, right?
Well, that's with the traditional.
Yeah.
But the 2449 has some different rules as I explain them. But in the hypothetical that Councilmember Barron has cited, if you have 3 that are sick, I suppose you could draw lots to see which of the 2 would participate. I don't really know. There is no answer to that question in the statute of what happens. I mean, it could be first come, first served. I mean, I think that'd probably be the mayor's decision at the time.
Thank you, Brian. All right, any other questions or comments?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I really appreciate when we get the updates on the new laws, And I think this is really good that we had this one in person and just, instead of just coming to us via email, because the public gets to hear it as well. And I think I saw something, and I think I dropped it off with Chip instead. There's some new regulations about a conflict of interest with people who have given you donations for your campaigns, that it doesn't roll back to 2022 things, but I think it's going forward in the future, where if you could explain that at some future time, I think that would be very helpful for all of us, because we don't want to be in conflict, and we still do need to raise money when we run for office. So,
sounds like a future agenda item, which is the next topic, so I'll talk to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem about adding
We
that.
get something on the agenda then to go ahead and have an update on that too. Yeah.
I'll be glad to provide that.
yeah, I think it's really good if we can continue to educate ourselves too about our general plan, what's in our general plan, how our general plan works, and maybe have a refresher on that, because it is a huge document, and I think it helps facilitate our decisions if we start with what does our general plan say, and I think the community would enjoy a little bit of a refresher on the general plan as well. Parts of ours have not been updated for years and years. Parts are updated every few years by law, but and we can even add things to our general plan, which is really nice to know, but I think it might be something for future.
So one point I did want to emphasize, I made this comment earlier, but I think it's worth restating it, is that you will still be able to continue to have hybrid meetings
Yes.
under any of these teleconferencing methods.
And we intend to. That's our technology setup. That's to allow people to continue to, the public to come in a virtual setting.
Alrighty, with that noted, I think we stand adjourned. Well done, guys. Appreciate it. Very professional night. No extended debate, no arguments. The public is very professional too. Although there was some disagreement out there, I do appreciate the professionalism. So thank you. We're adjourned.
1 minute earlier than I
90
thought.
minutes.